Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to our explainer on what is literally one of the most critical battles of our time, India's fight for forest and wildlife conservation. Today, we're going to explore how a nation packed with incredible biodiversity balances massive developmental pressures with the absolute urgent need to protect its natural heritage. And, we're doing it through a pretty unique lens. We're actually transforming a standard geography practice paper, specifically Weekly Practice Paper 5 by Digraj Singh Rajput, into a really compelling story of ecological survival. You see, an exam paper is usually, just a test of memory, right? But when you look closely at the questions and answers provided here, a vivid narrative emerges. It's a story about what we stand to lose and how both the government and everyday citizens are fighting to save it.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. Why forests matter. 2. The extinction threat. 3. The government steps in. 4. Sacred groves and traditions. And finally, 5. Communities leading conservation. We're going to see exactly how top-down government laws and bottom-up community traditions clash and ultimately combine to save nature.
All right, Section 1, Why Forests Matter. Before we look at any of the solutions, we absolutely have to understand the stakes.
So, the crucial point is that our source clearly outlines forests as both environmental lifelines and economic engines. They are far more than just a bunch of trees. They're literally complex life support systems. They ensure overall ecosystem resilience and act as massive carbon sinks to help mitigate climate change. Plus, they regulate local temperatures, rainfall, and humidity. But it's not just environmental, it's highly economic too. Forests fuel industries like timber and pharmaceuticals, boost ecotourism, and provide direct livelihoods for millions of people worldwide. They really are the whole shebang.
Moving right along to Section 2, the extinction threat.
Despite all those incredible benefits we just talked about, these vital ecosystems are under severe, unprecedented threat. Let's step into the shoes of a student taking this exam to really grasp the geography of this crisis. Here's a direct, objective-type question for you. Where is the Sariska Tiger Reserve located? Think about it for a second.
If you guessed B, Rajasthan, you nailed it. But identifying its location on a map is only half the battle. Places like Sariska represent critical habitats for some of our most iconic yet incredibly vulnerable species. And right now, they are facing a barrage of threats.
We're basically looking at a multi-front war against wildlife. The tiger population, for instance, was pushed to the absolute verge of extinction. Why? Well, because of rampant poaching for the illegal wildlife trade, a massive shrinking of their natural habitat, and the alarming depletion of the prey species they actually rely on to survive. And all of this is compounded by the relentless expansion of the growing human population. It's a perfect storm.
Which brings us to Section 3, the government steps in. Let's look at the top-down, legalistic approach.
When a crisis reaches a boiling point, where a magnificent species like the tiger is about to vanish forever, the state simply has to step in. But the government didn't just act out of nowhere. They reacted to intense public pressure. Back in the 1960s, conservationists desperately demanded a national wildlife protection program, and it worked. The government answered in 1972 by implementing the historic Indian Wildlife Protection Act. And then, just 1 year later, in 1973, Project Tiger was officially launched to save these big cats.
Okay, let's test your geographical knowledge once again with another question straight from the exam paper. Which Indian state has the largest area under permanent forests? Any guesses?
The answer is C, Madhya Pradesh. Managing these massive landscapes takes a huge administrative effort. The government essentially classifies these vast lands into reserved forests, protected forests, and unclassed forests to give them different levels of legal shielding.
And this brilliantly illustrates how the 1972 Act in Project Tiger stabilized populations by heavily regulating human activity. They outright banned hunting to protect endangered species, granted strict legal protection to habitats, and established a vast nationwide network of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. What's really cool is that modern conservation projects have transitioned their focus from just saving a single species to protecting the broader biodiversity of the entire ecosystem.
Now let's pivot to Section 4. Sacred groves and traditions, shifting from sterile government laws to deeply rooted cultural methods.
Laws and borders drawn by the government are really only one piece of the puzzle. The exam paper gives this beautiful definition. Sacred groves are forests or groups of trees protected by local communities simply because they are considered sacred and associated with gods and goddesses. I mean, think about that. This is conservation driven not by the fear of a government fine, but by profound reverence and spirituality.
To show just how deeply specific and fascinating these traditions are, the exam poses this cultural question. The Mundas and Santhals of the Chotanagpur region worship which among the following trees?
The answer is A, the Mahafa tree, alongside the Kadamba. Similarly, tribals in Odisha and Bihar worship tamarind and mango groves. It really goes to show that conservation isn't just some modern scientific invention. For many communities, protecting nature is fundamentally woven right into their faith.
Which leads us to the climax of our explainer. Section 5, Communities Leading Conservation.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how everyday people are taking radical, collective action to save their environment, completely independent of the government. Look at the Bairodev Dekhov Sanchari movement. Villagers in Rajasthan literally declared 1,200 hectares of forest protected under their own rules. Then you have the famous Chipko movement, which showed how communities can collectively save forests from logging in the Himalayas. And groups like the Bij Bachao Andolan prove that highly diversified crop production is completely viable without using synthetic chemicals.
So, what happens when top-down meets bottom-up? You get Joint Forest Management, or JFM. JFM represents the ultimate compromise. It's a step-by-step program that formally involves local communities in decision-making to protect biodiversity sustainably. In return, the locals are rewarded. Their lifestyle is improved by allowing them to harvest non-timber forest products like medicines, fruits, and gum. It's a true win-win.
Let's move to and see how this builds the complete picture. We clearly have two distinct forces at work here. On the left, government strategies, establishing national parks, Project Tiger, banning hunting. On the right, community strategies, protecting sacred groves, the Chipko movement, and joint forest management. Neither side can win the war against ecological destruction entirely alone. The real power lies in combining both.
We've seen the geography, the laws, and the cultural movements all hidden within the pages of a single practice exam. The survival of our wildlife relies on a strict legal framework just as much as it relies on grassroots reverence for nature. So I'll leave you with this provocative thought. As we look to the future, can we effectively blend modern, top-down laws with ancient community-led traditions to truly save our ecosystems? It's a question not just for a geography test, but for the very future of our planet. Thanks for hanging out with me on this explainer.